The galaxy feared her species until they realized she was the weakest one is the title of the story. In this story, we discuss about the galaxy reels from its first brush with the Vraith, Kaelara, the weakest of her kind, returns to the edge of existence, a place where stars whisper and time moves sideways. Alone in the void that birthed her people, she becomes the unwilling bridge between ancient minds of incomprehensible power and a galaxy still stumbling through its infancy. As fear ripples across systems and empires teeter on the brink of collapse, Kaelara must face the unbearable truth. Her fracture, her failure, may be the only thing that keeps annihilation at bay. But to hold back the Vraith, she must offer herself as their measure, and hope that her broken humanity is enough. The galaxy spoke of her in hushed tones, not by name, but by legend. Starfarers and diplomats whispered of the lone envoy from a world no one had ever seen and few had survived encountering. Systems that once thrived were now silent. Not destroyed, simply gone. Not a single shot fired, no bodies, no ruins. Just absence. Vanished from time and memory as if they'd never existed. And now she had arrived. Kaelara stepped from her obsidian-skinned vessel onto the cold, mirrored floor of the Concordia station. Her boots made no sound. Her cloak shimmered in shifting colors, like nebulae caught in motion. She was small, almost delicate, no taller than a human adolescent. But her presence carved silence from the air. All noise bent around her. Ambassador Jarrell of the Ison Collective was the first to speak. "We welcome you to neutral territory, Kaelara of the Vraith." He hesitated on the final word, as if uttering it might summon something from the void. Kaelara inclined her head. Her voice, when it came, was soft, melodic, yet hollow, like wind whispering through an ancient cave. "I speak only for myself." That puzzled them. The records, what few survived, told of a species whose will bent solar empires. They were not individuals. They were a force. Yet here she was, standing alone, a singular entity offering no threat, no demand. Just observation. Rumors rippled faster than light across the station's factions. The Alliance's military leaders believed this to be a tactic, a reconnaissance step before invasion. The Zorvath Dominion wanted to eliminate her immediately, citing defense protocols. The Relari priesthood declared her the embodiment of the final silence. But the scholars, the thinkers, they watched her closely, with curiosity hiding just beneath the fear. She did nothing to correct them. She walked the gardens. She sat in the archives. She watched the sun rise through artificial windows with the same reverence as a pilgrim before a sacred flame. A week passed. She did not speak of her kind. She did not display power. She asked only for silence and time. This was not what the galaxy expected. She began to draw attention in less official ways. A group of young diplomats from lesser systems approached her in the common atrium. One, a feathered Avioni named Trell, dared to speak. "Why are you really here?" Kaelara's gaze drifted toward him, her eyes deep pools of opal and stardust. "To listen." "To listen," he echoed, incredulous. "Your people made entire moons disappear. We thought you came to demand our surrender." Her lips curved faintly. "You fear the Vraith, but you do not know us." A pause. Then she added more softly, "You don't even know me." Behind the surveillance glass, Jarrell watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. He turned to his aide. "I don't like this. She's not here to negotiate. She's here to observe." "But why?" The aide, a crystalline thinker node from the Zerth cartel, replied in fractal tones. "Perhaps she is the harbinger. The first snowflake before the avalanche." That idea settled into the command chamber like a toxin. Elsewhere, far from their knowing, Kaelara stood beneath a holographic sky replicating the Milky Way. Her fingers brushed the stars like she was trying to remember them. She did remember them. Or rather, she remembered feeling them through the minds of the Vraith. Millions of interconnected thoughts, desires, hungers. She'd never been strong enough to join the collective fully. Her mind wandered, slipped, rejected their unity. She was cast aside, not with cruelty, but with disinterest. A single mind too weak to contribute. An anomaly. She had always been weak. On her world, strength was silence, motionless dominance, the ability to erase with a thought. She could barely levitate a stone. Yet now the galaxy feared her. She exhaled slowly. There was irony in that. Beautiful, tragic irony. A soft chime signaled someone approaching. She turned slightly, her senses already registering who it was. Jarrell, cloaked in political caution. Kaelara, he said carefully. Our leadership, they grow anxious. You understand why. I do. Then you must also understand that your presence is destabilizing. Civilizations are repositioning fleets. Trade routes are collapsing. Prophets are naming children after you. I didn't ask for worship, she said. Then what do you want? Silence stretched between them. At last she spoke. I want you to understand what you're truly afraid of. Jarrell blinked. And what is that? She looked out over the station's vast expanse. Stars blinked beyond the reinforced glass, uncaring, eternal. You're not afraid of the Vraith, she said. You're afraid that I'm not lying. The ambassador frowned. Lying about what? Her eyes turned to him, vast and ancient. That I'm the weakest one. Then she walked away, her cloak trailing like a shadow through space-time. Jarrell stood rooted in place. Behind him, lights flickered briefly across the station's interface panels, just enough to register, just enough to unsettle. No one else noticed. No alarm sounded. But Kaelara did not turn back. She knew they would listen now. Or try. And she knew this was only the beginning. They took her quietly, in the deep hours of the artificial night. No alarm sounded. No formal charges were read. A diplomatic loophole, a shift in jurisdiction, a whispered decision among panicked leaders. Whatever the cause, Kaelara was gone from her quarters before the galaxy noticed. Her captors were not brutish or loud. They wore gloves of legal authority and silence. The Vraith Dominion, the military fist behind the Concordia Alliance, had grown tired of waiting for a war that might come. She did not resist. Her expression betrayed neither surprise nor fear. She simply watched them as they encased her in a magnetic null field and led her through a corridor of dim, pulsating lights. The chamber they brought her to was sterile and cold, ringed with scanners, emitters, and obsidian-eyed observers. General Kovash stood behind the glass, arms folded, flanked by analysts from half a dozen species. He had never seen her up close before. She was smaller than he'd expected, her presence, so overwhelming in stories, reduced now to a figure wrapped in starlight and silence. She's weaker than she looks, muttered one of the engineers, examining the scan feeds. No enhanced musculature, no foreign implants, no neural anomalies. Biologically, she's substandard. Yet entire star systems vanished after contact with her people, Kovash replied. Keep scanning. Try psychic resonance, entropy mapping, subdimensional echo, whatever gets results. Inside the containment sphere, Kaelara stood still, her hands by her sides. She felt the probes brush against her thoughts, scrape along the walls of her mind. It was an invasive sensation, not painful, but intrusive. Like fingers rifling through a diary she hadn't written yet. You're searching for what makes me dangerous, she said aloud. The scientists froze. They hadn't activated any auditory channels. I'm not, she continued, her voice carrying through the walls without vibration. And you won't find what you're looking for. Because it isn't in me. Kovash narrowed his eyes. Then where is it? She looked at him, not through the glass, but into him. It's behind me. No one understood the meaning, not yet. But a chill passed through the observation room like a ripple in deep space. Some primal, wordless understanding. There were things not measured in mass or power levels. Things older than war. Hours passed. She was neither tortured nor harmed, only observed. They ran cognitive tests. She failed them. They ran threat assessments. She did not meet minimum thresholds. Her mind, it seemed, was cluttered with fragments and flares, half-formed thoughts, undisciplined processes. A failure, By every metric they had prepared. They began to doubt. Perhaps she truly was a decoy. Perhaps this was all theater. But doubt can be as dangerous as certainty. Elsewhere, Jarrell paced in a dim corridor near the diplomatic wing. He hadn't been informed of the transfer. It wasn't a breach of protocol, but it was a breach of trust. The more he thought of her words, "I'm the weakest one," the less he liked their implications. Not because she posed a threat, but because she didn't. She should have. On her world, she had been called Kaelara the Fragment. Not out of cruelty, but as a simple descriptor, she had never fully integrated with the Vraith. While others moved in synchronous purpose, she hesitated. While others erased cities with a thought, she trembled when ending a flame. Her mind resisted connection, refused the surrender required to become part of the whole. She had tried. Oh, how she had tried. The memories came unbidden. Her initiation, standing in the great black hall beneath a sky of living thought. The touch of the unity upon her mind, grand, vast, unbearable. She remembered collapsing beneath its weight, weeping silently as the elders regarded her with solemn indifference. She was not cast out. The Vraith did not exile. They simply forgot her. But now, standing under alien lights, poked and prodded by species too young to understand their own fears, she felt something stir. Not power, not vengeance, but clarity. Perhaps this was why they had let her go. Perhaps the Vraith had sent their fragment because only something broken could understand the separate. Kovash stepped into the chamber. He wore no weapons. His pride was armor enough. "Tell me what you are," he said. Kaelara regarded him without expression. "I am what your species calls a disappointment." His brow furrowed. "You're not afraid of what we'll do to you?" "No," she said simply. "Then you are the most dangerous one." She smiled faintly.
"No.
"I am the least."
Something shifted then.
Not in her body, but in the air. The lights dimmed for a second, not mechanically, but instinctively, as if the station itself held its breath. The analysts looked up. Readings began to fail. Sensors, monitors, psionic meters, all fading, all blank. Kaelara stepped forward until her foot met the inner curve of the containment field. It flickered. Not from her, but from something else. "They're listening," she said quietly. "Through me." The words hit Kovash like cold gravity. And far, far away, on the edge of a long-forgotten quadrant, something ancient opened its eyes. Kaelara closed hers. Now they would begin to understand. The warning arrived not as a message, but as a sensation. Concordia Station's orbit faltered, by a fraction of a fraction, detected only by the most sensitive instruments. Gravitational tides shifted unnaturally across systems bordering the outer expanse. Astrogators reported strange lensing effects near uncharted voids, as though space itself were flinching. And then, across every known communication network, across every frequency and encryption layer, a single pulse was received. Harmed, she will not be. Observed, she has been. This is the final courtesy. No origin. No source signature. The words arrived in every tongue simultaneously, etched into neural translators and shipboard interfaces. Not a threat, but a statement. Not broadcasted, imposed. In Concordia's control tower, chaos rose like a storm tide. Ships scrambled to break orbit. Civilian traffic clogged departure vectors. Military fleets repositioned into defensive alignments that no longer felt reassuring. Those who believed in gods began to pray. Those who didn't found new reasons to begin. General Kovash stood motionless in the command center. He didn't shout. He didn't order. He simply watched Kaelara's profile on the screen as her containment cell remained untouched, unchanged. He had known, somewhere in the marrow of his logic, that provoking her had been a mistake. But it was too late to regret. Kaelara sat cross-legged on the floor, hands resting gently on her knees, eyes closed. Her breathing was slow and deliberate, though breath was unnecessary. The Vraith did not need air. What she needed was stillness. To remain an anchor for the consciousnesses that now flowed through her like a current through a hollow shell. They were not speaking. They were witnessing. She had no control over their presence, no ability to sever it, no means to temper what they might decide. She had become their lens, their telescope, their proof that something foreign dared test what should have remained untouched. But she hadn't summoned them. She'd only been seen. A single whisper in her mind rose, not hers, but vast and distant. Show them what unmade stars dream. She shook her head gently. A silent refusal. The dream was not hers to give. Elsewhere on the station, Ambassador Jarrell moved through the panicked crowd like a man walking through fire. His diplomatic clearance meant nothing now. Authority fractured when confronted with fear this profound. Soldiers ignored orders. Civilians rioted. Evacuation was impossible. Too many systems had collapsed into paralysis. He reached the chamber where she was held just as the observation room cleared. Only Kovash remained, eyes fixed on her through the failing glass. "You've doomed us," Jarrell said coldly. "No," Kovash muttered. "She hasn't done anything. That's what should terrify you." They watched as Kaelara opened her eyes. The lights above her flickered, then steadied. Her voice came again, soft and echoing, yet resonating directly in their thoughts. "I did not come to destroy. I do not have that power." Kovash's voice was hoarse. "Then who does?" She tilted her head, and behind her, the air shimmered, not with heat, but with something deeper. Reality thinned like stretched fabric. Shadows peeled away from light in unnatural directions. The chamber around her blurred, not dissolving, but becoming less certain. Jarrell stepped back instinctively. "I am a fragment," she said. "The piece that did not fit. The mind too quiet for the choir. They sent me not to threaten you. They sent me because they could not imagine you'd matter." There was no cruelty in her tone, only honesty. Unbearable, profound honesty. Behind her, a shape formed. Not solid, not whole. A suggestion of geometry no species had words for. A presence, just enough to taste, not enough to understand. And then just as quickly it was gone. The chamber's lights returned to normal. The instruments recalibrated. Reality, ashamed of its own fracture, restored itself with hurried precision. Kovash staggered back. His heart raced. He realized in that moment what true insignificance felt like. He had spent a lifetime commanding legions, speaking for empires. Now, in her gaze, he was a child holding a sharpened stick against the night. Kaelara stood slowly. "I'm leaving," she said. "You can't," Jarrell whispered. "Where would you even go?" "Where I was always meant to be," she replied. "Alone." Kovash moved to block the exit. "If you leave, they'll follow you," he said. "Or they'll watch us through you. This isn't over." Kaelara paused, her expression unreadable. "They already are," she said. "You just haven't understood what that means." And then, with no gesture, no sound, she vanished. Not in a flash of light or burst of energy. She simply wasn't there anymore. Kovash turned to Jarrell, who had dropped into a chair, pale and sweating. "Where did she go?" he asked. Jarrell looked up slowly. "She told us." Behind her. The lights flickered one last time. And far beyond the stars, something uncoiled. Kaelara stood in the silence between galaxies, far beyond the mapped voids of the Concordia Accord. Her ship, a shell of obsidian thought and starlight, floated in place, unmoving, unpowered. There was no crew. No systems hummed. It was not built to travel, only to arrive. She had returned to the place where her species first left the stars. To others, it might seem a blank space, nothing but cold, unbroken darkness. But Kaelara felt the tremors in the emptiness. Echoes of consciousness far older than planets, beings who had long since stopped communicating in ways the living could measure. They pulsed faintly in her mind now. Curious. Not angry. Not yet. She wasn't sure how long she had left before they lost interest again, or worse, decided to reclaim her. Time passed differently here. Not forward. Not backward. But around. She remembered her mother, or the being she had called mother. A tall, silver form with eyes like collapsing suns. The mother had never spoken aloud, only impressed silence and disapproval. Kaelara had cried once, as a child, after failing a communion ritual. The tears had puzzled them all. The Vraith did not cry. They did not fracture. But Kaelara had been born with a crack in her pattern. Now, that crack had become a doorway. The galaxy behind her writhed with unrest. Concordia Station had gone dark. Not destroyed, but quarantined politically, spiritually. No one dared approach it. Fleets hovered at the edge of the system, engines idle. Rumors of the Vraith's awakening spread across worlds like infection. Refugees from unaffected systems still fled, not knowing why, only that something vast had stirred. And Kaelara was the name whispered in every tongue. Some called her an emissary, others a test, some a mistake. Only a few understood the truth. She had not brought danger. She was the warning. Her presence had opened a door, not to invasion but to notice. The Vraith had never truly regarded the lesser minds. Not out of cruelty, but because they existed on different wavelengths of thought. The way a star does not see the creatures orbiting it. But now, through Kaelara's fracture, a sliver of perception had leaked through. And once seen, lesser minds could not be unseen. She sat in the void, cross-legged, suspended in gravityless stillness. Her mind floated through the vast hum of her people's awareness. They had not spoken to her directly since childhood. She was outside the harmony. But now, they pressed against her again, testing the shell of her thoughts, scanning for corruption or intent. They did not blame her. They did not understand her either. Kaelara whispered into the void, not aloud, but into the pulse of their shared ancestry. They are not dangerous. A pause. A ripple. Danger is not the metric. Relevance is. She flinched. Behind her eyes, stars folded. The Vraith were not gods. They were something older. Something closer to memory given momentum. They did not conquer. They did not enslave. They simply erased what could not coexist. And now they had noticed a galaxy filled with chaos and contradiction, war and worship, cruelty and compassion, a place filled with noise and patternless thought. To them, it was not malevolent. It was inefficient. I was not meant to be a bridge, Kaelara said aloud. I was meant to be discarded. The response, when it came, was vast and emotionless. You remain incomplete. Your existence is anomaly. Your path has produced variables. I know, she whispered, but I've seen them. I've walked among them. They're unfinished. Like me. There was silence. Not absence, but consideration. They echo you. That is why they intrigue. That is why they must be silenced. Her breath caught. To the Vraith, variation was infection. And she, by returning, had brought it closer. I am the weakest one, she said again. But I am also the only one who chose to see. That ripple again. Far away, in the physical realm, Concordia Station sensors blinked online. Not all at once, just a flicker. A pulse. Systems once thought dead briefly acknowledged something. Not an attack. A memory. Jarrell stood in the now-abandoned observation room, watching the monitors. He had refused evacuation. Some said he had gone mad. He didn't argue. Madness, perhaps, was just clarity that hurt too much. He looked up as the lights brightened, just slightly. She's still out there, he murmured. She's holding them back. A whisper of static crawled across the console. It formed no words, but the tone was familiar. Kaelara. Back in the void, she extended her awareness fully. No longer shielding. No longer resisting. She opened her mind as far as she could, not in defense, but in offering. If I'm the weakest, she told them, then let them be measured through me. Not through what they fear, but what they choose. She expected rejection. Instead, the presence faded. No message followed. No final verdict. Only absence. And she remained. Floating.
Small.
Alone.
Alive. For now.
The galaxy held. The next story on this channel is tried to execute her publicly. Now her face is on every planet's flag, so stay with us.